The blue grease pencil rolled across the conference table and stopped against my wrist. On the screen behind Grant Mercer, a red weather front curved over 3 states like a claw. Beneath it was my route plan. Every highway change, every split load, every backup yard I had built on Sunday. I had rerouted every truck before Monday's regional storm briefing. Grant placed one hand on the table and smiled at the North Star Grocers team. "I designed it," he said. North Star's logistics director leaned forward. "This is exactly the kind of thinking we've been asking for." Grant thanked him while I sat beside him, close enough to smell the cinnamon gum he chewed when he was nervous. Then he reached for my grease pencil. I closed my fingers around it first. His eyes moved to my hand, then to my face. The smile remained, but something behind it sharpened. For one strange second, I wasn't wondering how he could take credit for my work. I was wondering how long he had been waiting to do it. Grant clicked to the next slide. "The key is anticipating where the network will tighten before the first road actually closes." That sentence was mine, too. I had said it at 6:42 Sunday evening in the dispatch room while sleet ticked against the dark windows and Ruth Calder ate vending machine pretzels over the keyboard. I had said it before drawing a blue line from our Bellwether terminal to the old Rollins crossdock, a place we use so rarely that the coffee filters in its break room had expired. Across the table, Dana Cho looked up from the packet in front of her. Dana was the external cold chain auditor North Star had brought in for the contract expansion. She wore a gray sweater, small gold hoops, and the expression of someone who could listen to a refrigeration unit and tell you which bolt was loose. "Why Rollins?" she asked. Grant didn't hesitate. That was one of his real talents. He could answer before uncertainty had time to show on his face. It gives us flexibility without overcommitting assets. Dana waited. Grant gave her a confident nod, as if he had completed the thought. I felt the grease pencil pressing a ridge into my palm. The real answer was that Rollins sat outside the ice band, had a working backup generator, and could accept a pharmacy transfer without breaking the temperature chain. The backup generator mattered more than the building. The transfer window mattered more than the distance. Grant knew Rollins was on the map. He did not know why. I looked at the North Star packet. My map had been cleaned up by marketing, but my marks were still visible under their legend. 3 blue loops, 2 slashes at the river grade, and a crescent-shaped nick where my pencil had caught on a cracked laminate edge. "Rollins is above the projected freezing line," I said. "It also gives the pharmacy loads a generator-backed handoff if Bellwether loses shore power." Dana turned toward me. "And the 2 slashes here?" The river grade closes early when rain turns to ice. Water pools under the rail bridge, then freezes from both shoulders. County crews usually block the south approach first. Grant stepped smoothly back into the conversation. "That's the kind of ground-level detail my team brought into the design." My team. North Star's logistics director, Paul Reardon, smiled at me now. "Good catch." 2 words. A scrap pushed to the edge of the plate. Grant moved on to projected fuel costs. I stayed quiet because if I spoke then, I was afraid my voice would come out too loud. And women in operations learned early that volume became the subject faster than theft did. The meeting lasted another 38 minutes. Grant answered questions about driver hours, yard capacity, and the storm escalation ladder. When he drifted toward generalities, I supplied a time, a road, or a dock restriction. Each time he folded my answer into his next one so neatly that it almost looked collaborative. At the end, Paul shook Grant's hand. "If this performs the way it looks," he said, "I think we'll be having a much bigger conversation." "That's the goal," Grant said. Dana gathered her packet but left 1 page on the table while she checked her phone. It was the route map. Her thumbnail rested directly beside the 2 slashes at the river grade. Grant waited until the North Star team had left before closing the conference room door. He turned to me. "What was that?" I stared at him. "You'll need to narrow it down." "The interruptions." "You mean the answers?" "I mean, jumping in every time I paused." You paused because you didn't know why Rollins was on the plan. His jaw shifted around the cinnamon gum. I knew. Then why didn't you say it? Because I was speaking at the network level. They don't need every culvert and generator in the opening presentation. Dana asked, and I was handling it. I set the grease pencil on the table between us. Its paper wrapper had peeled away near the middle, staining my thumb blue. You said you designed my route plan. I said I designed it because I'm accountable for it. That isn't what designed means. Grant gave a short breath through his nose. He had been doing that since we were both old enough to attend company holiday dinners and disagree over where the folding chairs belonged. Elena, this meeting was bigger than a byline. It was big enough for your name. My name is already on the department. That's convenient. His face changed then, not dramatically. Grant rarely lost control in ways other people could use. The skin around his eyes tightened, and his voice became gentler. You've been back 4 months. I looked at him. He leaned one hip against the table. You're doing good work. I've told Malcolm that. I've defended your overtime. I've made sure you had room to get your feet under you. My feet are fine. You were gone during the Whitmore rollout. You weren't here when North Star started threatening to move half the lanes to Caro. They don't know you. They knew my plan well enough to praise it. That's exactly my point. The plan needed a person they already trusted standing behind it. I laughed once, mostly because the alternative was uglier. And after they trust it? After the expansion, we talk about your role. What role? Something formal, route strategy lead possibly. With authority? We can work out the structure. Meaning no. Meaning this is not the moment to hold a knife to my throat over a presentation. There it was, my request for accurate credit, transformed into violence against him. I picked up the pencil. Grant glanced toward the glass wall. Outside, people moved between cubicles carrying headsets, coffee, route sheets. He lowered his voice. We have weather arriving tomorrow night. I need you focused. I was focused yesterday. Good, stay that way. He opened the door for me. At my desk, 3 monitors glowed with the morning dispatch board. Green blocks for released loads, amber for weather holds, red for exceptions. My Sunday plan had been entered into the system, but Grant's initials now appeared in the approval column. Ruth's message was waiting in the corner of my screen. How'd the royal unveiling go? I typed. Apparently Grant invented roads. The typing dots appeared at once. Again? I looked toward dispatch through the interior window. Ruth sat at the center console with silver hair clipped on top of her head and a headset crooked over one ear. She caught me looking and raised a pretzel in salute. I deleted what I had started to type next. Grant had presented it as his. Instead, I wrote, North Star liked the plan. Ruth's reply came back. Of course they did. It's a good plan. That kindness nearly did what Grant's theft hadn't. I got up and walked to the water cooler before my face could betray me. By noon, the Weather Service had moved the freezing line 18 miles south. That changed 3 routes. I returned to dispatch with my laminated cards tucked under my arm. Ruth slid her pretzels away from the keyboard as if preparing for surgery. Tell me something cheerful, she said. The river grade may become an ice rink 6 hours early. Beautiful. I'll bring skates. I clipped the bellwether card to the metal rail above her console and marked the south approach with 2 blue slashes. Truck 214 needs to move up its pharmacy stop, I said. Put Dean through Ashton before the rain drops below freezing. If he hits bellwether after 10, he stages at Rollins. Ruth entered the change. And 308? Split the restaurant freight at Rollins. Mateo takes the north half. Keisha comes up empty from Fairmont and takes the lower loop. That adds an hour and 40 minutes. It also keeps both of them off Route 6 after midnight. Ruth tilted her head toward the supervisor's office. His Majesty will notice the labor. He noticed it yesterday. He just called it flexibility. She snorted. A red recording light glowed over the dispatch console. All storm briefings were captured with the radio traffic and stored for accident review. Most of the recordings were never heard again. They lived on a server for 30 days, then disappeared under the next month of engine warnings, dock arguments, and drivers asking whether anyone had seen their fuel cards. On Sunday, Ruth had tapped that light when I began talking. "Start from the top," she had said. "If I get hit by a bus, I don't want Grant interpreting your handwriting. You commute 8 minutes on residential streets. Danger is everywhere." Now she pointed her pen at the blue slashes. "Want me to update the briefing? I'll send a written change." "Elena." "What?" "Your face is doing that thing." "What thing?" "The thing where you pretend you aren't mad because you've decided being useful is more urgent." I glanced through the glass. Grant was speaking to Malcolm Reese, our general manager, beside the printer. Grant's hands moved as he talked, shaping something larger than the space between them. "I asked him to correct it," I said, "and he offered me a future imaginary title. Does it come with imaginary dental? Full coverage." Ruth leaned back. "I still have yesterday's audio." "I know. You said your name at the beginning." "It's a routine recording, Ruth, not a weapon." I didn't call it a weapon. The dispatch phone rang. She answered in her warm, professional voice, leaving the sentence between us. I went back to my desk and opened the distribution list for the storm team. For 11 minutes, I tried to write an email that didn't sound wounded. Every version carried too much heat or too much surrender. I finally wrote, "Updated route cards are attached." For clarity, the routing assumptions from my Sunday briefing remain in effect. Avoid the river grade after the temperature drop. Preserve the Rollins generator back transfer option, and do not recombine pharmacy loads without confirming remaining weather margin with routing. I copied Grant, Ruth, the night dispatch lead, fleet safety, and Malcolm. I did not copy North Star. My finger hovered over send. The vulnerable part of my life could be measured in payroll cycles. My mother's physical therapy copays came out every Thursday. The repair estimate for my home furnace sat unopened in my bag. During the months I had spent driving my mother to appointments, Mercer had managed without me, and people had been careful to mention that in friendly ways. I sent the email. Grant appeared beside my desk 4 minutes later. He rested one hand on the partition and smiled toward 2 passing drivers before looking down at me. "Can I see you?" His office smelled like dry erase marker, and the cedar blocks his wife, my cousin-in-law Natalie, bought for him every Christmas. On the wall hung a framed photograph from a company charity golf tournament. Grant was in the center, holding a trophy he hadn't won. He had been presenting it to the winning team when the photographer arrived. He shut the door. "Why is fleet safety on that email?" "Because it contains storm routing assumptions." "It reads like a correction. It is a clarification." "Of whose mistake?" I met his eyes. "Whoever forgets the assumptions." He walked behind his desk but did not sit. "You're creating confusion about decision authority. The approval column already cleared that up." Grant's expression flickered. He hadn't expected me to notice his initials. "I signed the plan because supervisors approve route changes. You replaced my initials. I standardized the packet before sending it to North Star. You removed the planner's name. This is what I'm talking about." He spread both hands. "You see erasure. I see a department trying to survive a contract review. You told them you designed it. And since then, you've copied 5 people on an email that makes it look like you expect me to ignore safety constraints." "Do you?" His hands dropped. For a moment, I saw the competent part of him considering the question. Grant knew the storm was dangerous. He knew my route plan was better than the default. He also knew every added mile weakened the savings he had promised North Star. "I expect you to respect the chain of command," he said. "I expect my name to stay on my work." His desk phone lit up. North Star appeared on the display. Grant looked at it, then at me. "We'll finish this later." He picked up the receiver and changed voices. "Paul, great to hear from you." I opened the door. As I stepped into the hall, Grant said behind me, bright and easy, "Absolutely." I'm looking at my storm design right now. I stopped with my hand still on the knob. He watched me over the top of his monitor. Then he reached across his desk and, without breaking his conversation, closed the route packet over my blue marks. I let the door close and returned to my desk. The North Star call lasted 12 minutes. I could hear Grant's laugh through the glass twice. When he came out, he carried the packet under his arm. "Storm desk meeting in 10, he announced. Ruth caught my eye through the dispatch window. Grant gathered us around the waist-high operations table. Ruth, the night lead, Colin, fleet safety manager Malcolm Reese, and me. Malcolm had a habit of rubbing the bridge of his nose whenever two expensive problems arrived at once. He was already doing it. Grant placed the packet on the table, open to a clean copy of the map. "North Star wants a cost projection before 5, he said. "We're currently adding just over 16 driver hours and approximately $900 in fuel to the normal schedule." "Normal weather isn't arriving," Ruth said. "Thank you, Ruth." "You're welcome, Grant." His mouth tightened. "We need disciplined communication. Effective immediately, all storm-related route changes come through me. Dispatch will execute only after I approve them." Colin looked at me, then quickly down at his tablet. Malcolm stopped rubbing his nose. "Elena has always handled live routing." "I'm not changing her responsibilities," Grant said. "I'm clarifying final authority." "That sounds like changing her responsibilities with more syllables," Ruth said. I almost smiled. Grant ignored her. "Elena will continue monitoring conditions and making recommendations. I'll approve the operational decisions." "Why?" Malcolm asked. "Because North Star is evaluating the whole department through this event. They need consistent command." Malcolm looked at the weather screen. "They need their lettuce and insulin to arrive cold." "And they will." Grant said it with enough calm that Malcolm let the silence go. Malcolm had been with Mercer for 27 years and could coax a damaged refrigeration unit through a holiday weekend using parts from 3 different models. He was less comfortable when the broken equipment wore a tie. I pointed to the projected ice band. "County moved its pre-treatment crews south. If the temperature drops before 10, I need authority to hold drivers without waiting for you to call back. I'll be available." "You were unavailable for 40 minutes this morning." "I was with the client." "The weather won't check your calendar." Grant looked at Malcolm. "This is the tone I'm trying to address." Malcolm's eyebrows rose. "Her tone says ice." Grant slid the clean map toward me. "Submit your recommendations in the routing system. I'll respond promptly." The meeting ended with nothing resolved except the hierarchy Grant had wanted. Ruth took the clean map to dispatch, where she clipped it over the marked one. A blue edge still showed underneath. At 4:30, Grant approved my 3 route changes. At 4:42, he changed 2 of them. Truck 308 split at Rollins disappeared. Keisha's empty run from Fairmont was canceled, and Mateo was assigned the full restaurant loop. The system estimated a savings of 2 hours and 11 minutes because the software believed Route 6 at midnight was the same road as Route 6 at noon. I walked into Grant's office without knocking. "You recombined 308. I optimized it. "Mateo will run out of legal hours if he has to stop for weather. He has 48 minutes of margin. On dry roads. He can take his break at the Hensley dock." "Hensley doesn't allow drivers to remain on property after unloading." "They're our customer." "They're also next to a casino and tired of people sleeping in their lot." Grant leaned back. "You have a reason for everything. That is the job. The job also involves weighing costs. Then put a price on retrieving a tractor from a ditch." His desk phone lit up. He turned it face down without answering. "Mateo has chains," he said. "Chains help with traction. They don't add minutes to his clock." The latest model shows the heavy band north of Route 6. The model at noon showed it south. And if it shifts again, we adjust. "From where? Mateo's cab?" Grant stood. "The change stays." I held his gaze for another second, then turned toward the door. Elena. I stopped. If you undermine this decision with the drivers, it becomes an insubordination issue. You don't need me to undermine it. The altered route went out at 5. Mateo came into dispatch 15 minutes later, wearing a black watch cap and carrying a plastic container of rice and chicken. He set it beside Ruth's pretzels. "Why am I carrying Hensley through Hawthorne?" he asked. "Executive adventure tourism," Ruth said. He looked at me. "Elena?" Grant approved the combination. That wasn't my question. I glanced toward the supervisor's office. Grant was watching through the glass. "The forecast still supports leaving the mountain section before midnight," I said carefully. "If your delay reaches 30 minutes, contact dispatch before you enter Route 6. Mateo followed my glance and understood. "I'll call when Hensley makes me wait. Document your arrival time." "I always do." "That's because you enjoy paperwork," Ruth said. "I enjoy proving I was right." He lifted his container and walked toward the break room. Ruth waited until he was out of earshot. "You two should start a club." We did. Meetings are exhausting. At 6, I went home long enough to shower, change clothes, and put my unopened furnace estimate on top of a stack of unopened mail. My townhouse had acquired the faint metallic chill of a building deciding whether to become a problem. My mother lived 15 minutes away in a brick condominium with heated floors she kept too warm. Monday dinner had been on her calendar for weeks. If I canceled, she would assume work had swallowed me again. If I went, I would have to sit across from Grant. I went. My mother opened the door before I knocked. She leaned on her cane more when she was tired, though she claimed the cane was decorative. "You look like you argued with a truck," she said. The truck had weak points. "Wash your hands." Natalie brought bread. The dining table had been extended with its extra leaf, a piece of family engineering that required 2 adults, a screwdriver, and blame. Grant was pouring wine. His wife, Natalie, arranged roasted vegetables on a platter while my Aunt Lorraine corrected the angle of the napkins. Lorraine had kept Mercer Cold Chain's books for 31 years. Retirement had reduced her access to company information without reducing her opinions about it. "There she is," Lorraine said. "Our weather genius." Grant focused on the wine. I kissed my aunt's cheek. "Who told you that?" "Paul Reardon emailed your mother." My mother smiled. "He said the plan was excellent." "He said Grant's plan was excellent," Lorraine corrected. Natalie stopped moving the serving spoon. My mother looked between Grant and me. "I understood Elena worked on it." "Elena did more than work on it," Grant said. "She built most of the route detail. It was the first accurate sentence he had offered all day, and he gave it to a room that could not affect his promotion." "Most?" I asked. Natalie set the spoon down. "Should I open the other wine?" "Yes," my mother said. "We're fine," Grant said at the same time. Natalie opened it. Dinner moved through safe topics for 9 minutes. Lorraine disliked the new pharmacy near her house. My mother's physical therapist wore aggressive sneakers. Natalie had discovered that their dishwasher's filter was removable and now distrusted every meal they had eaten during the previous 6 years. Grant talked about the storm only when Lorraine asked. "North Star could double our pharmacy volume," he said. "If we demonstrate control this week." "Elena says weather does not care about control," my mother said. Grant looked at me. "Elena says many memorable things. I should start invoicing you for them." His fork touched his plate. Natalie drank her wine. Lorraine said, "You two used to work well together." "We still do," Grant replied. "Did you tell North Star Elena made the plan?" The question came from my mother. She asked it while cutting a roasted carrot into precise pieces. Grant wiped his mouth with his napkin. "I told them my team developed it." "That wasn't what you said in the meeting," I said. Lorraine exhaled. "Does this need to become a family matter?" "No," Grant said. "It is a workplace matter." "Then tell the truth at work," I said. My mother set down her fork. "Elena, the warning in my name was familiar. She had used it in hospital rooms when I questioned rushed nurses and at physical therapy when I asked why her swelling had worsened. It meant I might be right, but was making rightness inconvenient. Grant leaned forward. North Star is looking for stability. If I go back now and explain that there's an internal dispute over authorship, it makes us look divided. You made us divided. I made a presentation. With my words. Fine. After the expansion decision, I'll make sure Paul understands your contribution. Privately? If that's appropriate. Lorraine brightened as though he had offered something. There. That's reasonable. I looked at her. He gets the contract and promotion first, and then I get a quiet correction? You get your work recognized without damaging the company. Who is damaged in that arrangement? Natalie put her hand flat on the table. Grant, just correct it now. He looked at his wife. She held his stare. Natalie was usually so soft-spoken that people mistook her silence for agreement. If one of your account managers did this to you, you'd take away his biggest client. That's different. Why? Because this isn't about credit. It's about presenting unified leadership. My mother reached for my wrist. Her hand was warm and thin, the nails recently painted a cheerful coral by Lorraine. Elena, we all know what you did, she said. The gentleness hurt more than Grant's defensiveness. All of you knowing doesn't put my name back on the plan. Her fingers loosened. I folded my napkin and stood. You haven't eaten, she said. I'm not hungry. Outside, the air smelled wet and mineral. Rain had begun tapping against the parked cars, soft enough to seem harmless. Grant came out while I was unlocking my door. Elena. I opened the car but didn't get in. He stopped beneath the porch light. You embarrassed my mother. I looked back at the condominium. Through the dining room window, Lorraine was stacking plates with sharp, efficient movements. You embarrassed me in front of a client. I'm trying to keep 40 people working. So am I. That's why I'm worried about the routes you're changing. His face went still. This is the problem. You've attached your professional judgment to being angry with me. I was good at my job before I was angry with you. Then act like it. My phone vibrated in my coat pocket. A dispatch alert, not a call. Weather service, flash freeze window advanced to 2100. I held the screen toward him. The river approach needs to close now. Grant read the alert. Submit it. I already recommended it. Then I'll review it. Grant, Dean leaves Bellwether at 8:20. His normal route puts him under the rail bridge at 9:10. I said I'll review it. He walked back inside. I submitted the closure from my car. Then I drove to the terminal. By the time I arrived, the rain had thickened. It rattled against the loading bay roof and turned the yard lights into pale blurs. Ruth was still at dispatch, though Colin had taken the night chair. Thought you were at dinner, she said. I was. Bad weather there, too? Localized pressure system. On the board, truck 214 showed green, released. I looked at its route. The river grade was still active. Did Grant review my closure? Colin shifted in his chair. He denied it. Reason? He said county hasn't posted a restriction. We don't wait for the barricade. That's the entire point of a storm plan. Ruth tapped the county camera feed. Water already shone black beneath the rail bridge. Dean hasn't pulled out yet, she said. Doc is finishing the pharmacy pallets. I opened 214's route card. Hold him. Colin rubbed his jaw. Grant's directive says, I know what it says. Elena, Ruth said quietly. Grant's voice came from behind us. Release the truck. He had entered through the side door, rain shining on the shoulders of his coat. I turned. The freeze window moved up. There is no closure. There will be ice before Dean reaches the bridge. He can assess conditions when he gets there. A loaded reefer doesn't assess a flooded underpass. It commits to it. Grant stepped beside Colin's console. Release 214. Colin's hand hovered over the dispatch key. I reached past him and placed a routing hold on the load under my credentials. The block on the screen changed from green to red. Grant stared at it. Remove the hold, he said. No. The dispatch room seemed to shrink around the sound of the rain. He spoke more softly. That is a direct instruction. I won't approve that route. I'll approve it, then use your credentials. His eyes shifted to the red recording light above the console. For the first time all day, he looked less angry than careful. He logged in, removed my hold, and reassigned the approval to himself. Then he changed Dean's route, not to Rollins, but to a northern bypass that added 34 miles and avoided the bridge. The same bypass I had submitted 3 hours earlier. Truck 214 is released, he said. The block returned to green. Ruth looked at the screen. Congratulations, you invented the North. Grant turned to me. My office. Now. Rainwater followed us down the hall in dark spots. He left his door open. Malcolm was already inside, summoned before Grant had entered dispatch. A printed email lay on the desk between them. Grant removed his wet coat. Effective immediately, he said. You are off the Storm Command desk pending administrative review. Malcolm's face was tired. Elena, this is paid while we sort it out. My overtime isn't paid. Grant picked up the printed email, my clarification. Blue highlighter marked the sentence about recombining pharmacy loads. You challenged decision authority in writing and then blocked a released truck. I blocked a route you just avoided. You refused a direct instruction. I refused to put my name on it. Grant folded the email once, precisely. You won't have that problem, he said. Your routing access is suspended. Malcolm walked me to my desk. He tried to make it look casual, but an escort performed casually was still an escort. People became intensely interested in their screens as I unplugged my phone charger and put my mug in my bag. The blue grease pencil lay beside my keyboard. I slipped it into my coat pocket. Ruth came out of dispatch carrying the marked bellwether card. Do you need this? She asked. Grant stood in his office doorway. I looked at the card, then at him. It belongs on the board. Ruth clipped it back beneath the clean map. The cracked laminate caught the blue pencil line in that familiar crescent. I'll check on your plants, she said. I don't have plants. Then I've already succeeded. Malcolm held the exterior door for me. Rain struck the metal awning hard enough to drown out the dock alarms. Elena, he said before I stepped outside, don't log into anything until we finish the review. I can't log in. He suspended my access before I left his office. Malcolm looked back through the glass. That fast? He was prepared. His mouth pulled to one side. Go home, I'll call tomorrow about the process. I walked into the rain. My furnace was blowing cold air when I got home. I stood over the vent with my wet socks in one hand, feeling the exact same temperature I had felt before leaving. The repair company's estimate remained on the counter. Igniter, control board, labor, emergency surcharge if I wanted someone before Thursday. I selected Thursday. Then I opened my personal laptop at the kitchen table and watched the county road camera anyone could access. Water crept across the river approach beneath the rail bridge. At 9:17, the image refreshed and showed the first county barricade angled across the south lane. I saved the bulletin as a PDF. For 10 minutes, I did nothing with it. Grant had ordered me away from operations. He had also told dispatch the bridge was safe until a barricade appeared. Now one had. I sent the bulletin to Ruth's company address with one sentence, for the storm file. Her reply came a minute later. Received. At 10:08, my work email stopped loading. At 10:31, the power flickered. My furnace coughed as if offended by the opportunity and continued blowing cold air. I put on another sweater. The next sound came from my front door shortly after midnight. 3 firm knocks, a pause, then one more. Ruth stood outside holding my blue travel mug and a paper bag. You left this, she said. I didn't. You did now. I let her in. She carried the smell of wet pavement and burned coffee with her. I'm not supposed to talk to dispatch, I said. I'm not dispatch at the moment. I am an elderly woman trespassing with a sandwich. You're 61. A relic. She set the bag on the counter. Turkey, mustard, no tomato because your refrigerator has standards. What happened? Ruth looked toward the cold vent. First, what happened here? It's becoming an igloo. Do you have somewhere warm to go? My mother's place. Will you go? No. Then we have established your judgment is inconsistent. I folded my arms. She gave up and lowered her voice. Hensley held Mateo 53 minutes. I looked at the clock. He can't finish Hawthorne. He told Colin that. Grant said the weather margin was still intact. How much drive time? 36 minutes when he left Hensley. Rollins is 22 away if the West Road is open. It's open. Crossdock crew was canceled. Of course it was. Grant had counted their labor among his savings. Mateo has a key card, I said, but he can't transfer freight alone. Keisha is parked at Fairmont. She kept the empty tractor. Ruth smiled faintly. Keisha does not surrender useful equipment just because a computer tells her to. Send her north. Mateo parks at Rollins and goes off duty. Keisha takes the lower loop. That was your original plan. Yes. Grant won't approve it. Then why are you here? Ruth looked down at the paper bag. Because Dean's pharmacy reefer is showing a low fuel warning. The room seemed colder. He fueled at Bellwether. Tractor did. Yard skipped the reefer tank because the new fuel clerk thought the gauge was part of the refrigeration display. He was supposed to top it at Rollins. Grant removed the stop after rerouting him north, said Bellwether could handle the return. Bellwether's power? Out. Generator failed its transfer test. Rollins had a working generator, shore power plugs, and a locked fuel cabinet. It also had nobody staffing it because Grant had canceled the crew. Dean has the brass key for the Rollins fuel cage, I said. Malcolm gave it to him during the summer outage. It's on the same ring as his old red seal cutter. You sure? He complained for 3 weeks that the ring tore his pocket. Ruth picked up her phone, then paused. This can't come from you. It didn't. You remembered. I'm old. Memory comes and goes. Ruth. I remember where Grant was Sunday. He arrived after 7 and left before you finished. I remember who drew those routes. I remember who said Rollins was wasted mileage. The recording light flashed in my mind. Save the freight, I said. Everything else can wait. She left with the sandwich still on my counter. I watched the public weather map until the green and pink bands blurred together. At 1:26, Ruth sent a photograph without a message. Truck 214 sat under the Rollins canopy, orange marker lights glowing through sleet. Beside it, Mateo and Keisha were moving restaurant pallets beneath the dock lamps. Dean stood at the fuel cage with the brass key ring raised in one gloved hand. 3 safeguards Grant had removed were now happening at once. I slept for 2 hours in my coat. Malcolm called at 9 the next morning. North Star logged a temperature exception, he said. How bad? Load stayed in range, but the reefer discharge temperature climbed within 2 degrees of the threshold before Dean got fuel. Product temperature? Stable. Dana still requested the full chain of custody file. She should. He was quiet. Did Grant tell you Ruth came here? I asked. She clocked out first. That wasn't my question. He knows somebody reminded her about Dean's key. Dean remembered his key. Elena. What do you want me to say? He sighed. I want this storm to stop producing paperwork with knives in it. Then tell the truth in the paperwork. Review meeting is tomorrow at 10. You'll be paid for the time. Bring a representative if you want one. Who is attending? Me, Grant, Dana, Paul by video, and Lorraine. I sat straighter. Why Lorraine? Mercer asked her to review the old operating policies. She isn't there as family. Lorraine could make a grocery list feel like a tax deposition. Anything else? Grant says the original route draft came from you, but the live recovery decisions came from him. I looked at Ruth's photograph on my phone. Of course he does. He also says your preliminary draft included the river grade. It did, until the freeze window advanced. He has a packet showing the river route under your initials. My hand moved toward my coat on the chair. The grease pencil remained in its pocket. What time was the packet generated? Monday at 4:18. My closure recommendation was submitted at 3:57. I know. That was the first time Malcolm sounded less tired than angry. After the call, I paid the furnace company's emergency surcharge. The technician arrived that afternoon, replaced the igniter, and told me the control board might survive another year if I stopped asking it for miracles. I paid with the credit card I had nearly cleared the month before. Warm air had just begun moving through the house when Grant knocked. He stood on my step without a coat. The storm had passed, leaving ice in the bare branches and dirty ridges along the curb. "I'm not discussing the review without Malcolm," I said. "This is a family conversation." "That category has become very convenient for you." He looked past me at the technician carrying tools to his van. "Furnace? Did you come to inspect my expenses?" "I came because tomorrow can still be contained." I waited. He held out a folder. "The administrative finding can be a communication failure. You acknowledge that the Sunday plan was a collaborative draft and that you bypassed reporting lines during execution. I acknowledge that your technical work should have been identified more clearly." Should have been? The wording is still flexible. I opened the folder. His proposed statement used "we" 9 times and my name twice. One appearance blamed me for the river route. The other confirmed that I had received counseling. "Your live corrections," I said. "Is that what you're calling Rollins?" I approved the use of Rollins. After Ruth sent Keisha there, I made the final decision. You canceled the cross-dock crew, based on the forecast we had. You removed Dean's fuel stop, and I authorized his recovery. After he was already within 2 degrees of an exception. Grant's voice hardened. "This is exactly why I came. You're building a version where every positive outcome belongs to you, and every imperfect decision belongs to me." I almost admired the symmetry. You stood in front of North Star and said, "I designed it." I was trying to win the contract. So was I. He looked down at the folder between us. "Sign this and your access is restored Friday. Malcolm and I create the route strategy lead position. We move forward. With authority? You'd lead plan development, and you'd approve it, present it, change it, then explain what I meant. Elena, titles come before authority. That's how organizations work. That's how decorations work." He pulled the folder back. "If you force a formal finding, they may uphold the suspension." "They may. You'll lose Storm overtime." I already did. North Star could walk. Because you stole a route plan? Because you cannot separate recognition from responsibility. I took the blue grease pencil from my coat and set it on the narrow table by the door. Grant stared at it. "You know what that mark means," I said. "What mark?" "The crescent on the bellwether card." His eyes returned to mine. "When the laminate cracked, it caught the pencil every time I closed a route. Sunday's map has that mark. So does the cleaned-up plan you presented. The plan you're calling preliminary and flawed is the same one North Star praised. A pencil mark proves you touched a map. It proves which map you copied. For the first time, his confidence slipped far enough for me to see calculation beneath it. Then he recovered. "Maps change," he said. "Operations change. That's why supervisors make decisions." He left the folder on my doorstep. My mother came the next morning in a cab, carrying a foil-wrapped dish and leaning heavily on her cane. "I brought eggs," she said. "You hate eggs." "I brought you eggs." I stepped aside. She placed the dish in my refrigerator and turned to face me. "Lorraine asked me to convince you to accept a private apology. Did you?" I told her I had already done enough convincing. Her coral nail polish was chipped at one thumb. "I thought keeping peace meant keeping everyone together," she said. "It seems I mostly meant keeping you quiet because you were the one who would listen to me." I looked away. She touched my sleeve. "I am sorry." The apology didn't fix the meeting waiting for me. It did give me somewhere to stand. At Mercer, Dana Cho had arranged the packets before we entered. Grant's copy was thick, tabbed, and newly printed. Mine contained the Sunday map, the access log, the temperature report, and my clarification email. Paul appeared on the wall screen from North Star's office. Lorraine sat at the far end of the table with a legal pad. Malcolm closed the door. Dana began with the near temperature exception. Grant described shifting weather, a missed reefer fueling, and live supervisory corrections that stabilized Elena's preliminary routing draft. Dana turned one page. The river route under Ms. Marquez's initials was generated at 4:18, she said. Her closure recommendation was logged at 3:57. Why was the older route issued later? Grant folded his hands. The system reflects drafting activity, not the full decision sequence. Dana touched the crescent mark on the copied map. Then let's establish the sequence, she said. Who delivered the Sunday storm briefing? Grant looked at me as if the answer might change depending on who said it first. I led the briefing, he said. Elena covered route-level details. Dana's eyes stayed on him. From what location? The dispatch room. Ruth had told me Grant arrived after 7. My briefing began at 6:42. You weren't there when it started, I said. I joined it. At 7:08, Malcolm said. Grant turned toward him. Malcolm slid a building access report across the table. Your badge opened the dispatch door at 7:08. The briefing continued after I arrived. It did, I said. You stayed 11 minutes. Lorraine's pen stopped moving. Dana glanced toward the closed door. Is Miss Calder working today? She's at dispatch, Malcolm said. Please ask her to join us. Grant shifted in his chair. Dana, I'm not sure bringing another employee into an administrative review is appropriate. This is also North Star's temperature exception review. Dispatch executed the recovery. I need its account. Malcolm left the room. Paul's video froze with his mouth slightly open, then caught up. Do we have the original briefing record? Grant answered before I could. We retain routine radio traffic, but I don't know that an internal planning discussion would have been captured. The door opened. Ruth walked in with her headset resting around her neck and a flash drive in her hand. Malcolm followed her. I brought visual aids, she said. Grant's face tightened. You copied company audio to a removable device? I brought the security key for the archive console. The audio is still on the server where it belongs. She sat beside me and placed the key on the table. Dana looked at her packet. The temperature file includes a short excerpt recorded when Truck 214 was redirected to Rollins. The archive index shows a longer recording from Sunday. 2 hours and 14 minutes, Ruth said. Weather briefing, driver acknowledgments, route changes, and Colin complaining about the coffee. Colin was not in the room, but Ruth still lowered her voice for the last part. Dispatch preserved the whole thing? Paul asked. Storm procedure. Dana turned to Malcolm. Can we play it here? Yes. Grant unfolded his hands. Before we do this, I want to be clear that spoken discussion does not establish authorship. Supervisors solicit input. We synthesize it. Dana considered him for a moment. I listened to part of this audio while reviewing the temperature exception, she said. I'd like to hear the briefing again from the beginning. Ruth connected the archive console to the conference room speakers. A soft electronic tone sounded. Then came the dispatch room as it had been Sunday evening. Radio static, sleet against the windows, the scrape of Ruth's pretzel bag. My recorded voice filled the room. This is Elena Marquez, Sunday storm reroute briefing starting at 18:42. Current model has the rain line crossing Bellwether before the temperature drop, so I'm closing the river grade in advance rather than waiting for county barricades. Ruth entered the first archive marker. On the screen, the route map appeared beside the audio timeline. My blue marks formed one by one as the system displayed the scanned cards attached to the briefing. My voice continued. Truck 214 takes Ashton early, bypasses the rail bridge, then stages at Rollins if Bellwether shore power is unstable. Dean keeps the Rollins fuel cage key. Confirm his tractor and reefer tank separately. They are separate gauges, and the new clerk missed one on Friday. Malcolm closed his eyes briefly. the missed reefer tank had not been unforeseeable. I had named the exact risk 2 days before it happened. On the recording, Ruth said, "Why Rollins instead of bringing him straight home? Generator, shore power plugs, fuel access, and pharmacy transfer authorization. It costs us 34 miles. It buys us somewhere safe to be wrong." Dana looked at Grant. He stared at the map on the screen. The recording moved to truck 308. "Do not recombine Mateo's Hensley load with Hawthorne," my Sunday voice said. "Hensley's average dock delay is 46 minutes, and they won't let him take his break on the property. If he loses more than 30 minutes, Keisha comes empty from Fairmont and takes the lower loop after the Rollins transfer." Ruth's recorded voice asked, "Cross-dock crew, until when?" 2 a.m. "We need 2 people even if they spend the night playing cards." "They don't know how to play cards." "Then the company is investing in professional development." A laugh escaped Malcolm before he could stop it. It vanished quickly. The recording ran another 20 minutes before Grant's voice appeared. "What's Rollins doing open?" he asked in the background. I heard my chair roll away from the console. "It's our safe handoff outside the ice band." "For how many loads?" "Potentially 3. "You're adding crew and facility cost for 3 potential loads." "I'm adding it for the conditions that make the loads potential." There was a pause. Grant's recorded voice came closer. "North Star is already pushing us on cost per mile. Rollins is wasted mileage unless a road actually closes." My answer was quiet. "If we wait until the road closes, the trucks will be on the wrong side of it." Ruth stopped the audio. The silence afterward had texture. Ventilation hummed above us. Somewhere beyond the wall, a tractor released its air brakes with a long mechanical sigh. Dana touched the clean packet Grant had brought. "This presentation identifies you as the storm plan designer," she said to him. "Monday's cost revision removes the Rollins crew, recombines truck 308, and deletes 214's fuel stop. Your credentials approved all 3 changes. I adjusted a conservative draft as conditions developed. The conditions developed in the direction Ms. Marquez predicted. The storm shifted repeatedly." "Yes," Dana said. "That is why I'm reviewing the decision process rather than the weather." Grant looked toward Paul's image on the screen. "We delivered every load." Paul's expression was flatter than it had been Monday. "Because dispatch rebuilt Elena's plan after you took it apart," he said. "We made live corrections. That's what an operations team does." Dana opened the temperature report. "Who directed truck 214 to Rollins?" "I authorized it." "At what time?" Grant glanced at the report. 1:19. Ruth leaned toward the table. "Dean entered the Rollins yard at 1:14. Grant looked at her. "He called from the gate," she said. "Your authorization came after I reported that his reefer was connected to shore power. I was managing multiple exceptions." "I know, I was managing the same ones." Lorraine put down her pen. "Grant," she said, "did you design the route plan you presented to North Star?" His shoulders changed. Until then, he had been leaning slightly forward, still selling the next sentence. Now he sat back. "I was accountable for the plan." "That is not what I asked." Grant looked at his mother, then at me. "I shaped the strategy. I reached into my bag and set the blue grease pencil beside Dana's copied map. This mark came from the crack in the bellwether card," I said, pointing to the crescent in the route line. "It caught every time I drew across it. The map you presented has the same mark. So does the Sunday archive scan." Dana placed the copies together. The blue crescent sat in the same place on both. Grant rubbed his thumb against the edge of the table. Paul broke the silence from the screen. "Why did you tell us you designed it?" Grant's answer, when it came, was less polished. "Because I needed you to believe there was leadership behind it." I felt Ruth go still beside me. Paul said, "There was." Grant looked at me, and for the first time since the conference room door had closed on Monday, he seemed to see how much worse the plain truth was than any accusation I could have made. Dana disconnected the presentation screen from the archive but did not close her packet. My finding will address 3 issues, she said. The near temperature exception, removal of documented controls without a replacement risk assessment, and unreliable attribution during the client review. North Star will need a corrective action response before we expand any lanes. Are you suspending Mercer? Grant asked. North Star is holding the expansion decision. Current loads continue under the existing agreement. Paul nodded. The expansion isn't dead, it is conditional. Grant seized on that. I can have a corrective plan by Friday. Paul looked toward me. Who would write it? Grant did not answer. Malcolm asked Ruth to return to dispatch. She squeezed my wrist once beneath the table before leaving. The administrative portion lasted another hour. Grant's report accused me of bypassing authority. The access log showed his later wrote revisions. The archive showed that each recovery restored an element of my Sunday plan. Malcolm rescinded my suspension before the meeting ended. I'd like Elena back on storm routing today, he said. I closed the folder in front of me. I'm not coming back to the same job today. Grant looked up. You've been cleared. That doesn't restore anything. What exactly do you want? Lorraine asked. Her tone was cool, but the question was real. I'll put it in writing. Grant shook his head. We have an active client issue. You have an active client issue. You're part of this department. Only when responsibility needs company. Malcolm leaned back. How long do you need? Until tomorrow morning. Elena, Grant said, this is not the time to negotiate. It's the first honest time we've had. I took the grease pencil and left. My mother was waiting in the terminal lobby. She had refused my suggestion that she stay home and had arranged herself in a vinyl chair beneath a framed photograph of Mercer's first refrigerated trailer. When she saw my face, she stood carefully. Well, dispatch kept the briefing. And they played it. Her shoulders lowered. That Ruth, she said. I should make her something. She doesn't trust food that's good for her. I can work with that. At home, I wrote my conditions at the kitchen table while the repaired furnace clicked on and off. Regional routing manager, written authority to place immediate weather holds, planner names retained on internal and client-facing route documents. No supervisor permitted to alter a safety constraint without recording the reason and replacement control. Restored overtime, back pay for the storm hours I had lost, and a corrective statement to everyone who received Grant's presentation. I added one more line. Operational findings would go to Malcolm, not Grant. Then I deleted 3 angry sentences and went to bed. Malcolm accepted most of it the next morning. The company's executive group changed my requested back pay to include the review meeting, and the hours Ruth's records showed I had worked before suspension. They made the new role subject to a 6-month performance review, which was ordinary enough that I accepted it. The argument lasted over reporting lines. If Grant remains operations supervisor, you report to him, Lorraine said. Then I don't return. Grant sat across from me, his tie slightly crooked. Natalie had probably chosen it. She had probably also stopped fixing it for him. Malcolm folded his copy of my conditions. I don't think Grant can remain operations supervisor. Grant looked at him sharply. You're good with accounts, Malcolm continued. You understand client pressure and margin better than anyone in this building. But I can't have dispatch questioning whether your safety decisions are operational or promotional. You're demoting me. I'm moving you to account management, same base salary, no supervisory authority over routing. And the network director opening? Closed to you. Grant turned to his mother. Lorraine did not rescue him. Take the work you're actually good at. He gave a low, bitter laugh. Everyone gets to leave with dignity, except me. I looked at him. You tried to take mine because you thought you needed it more. He met my eyes. The fight went out of his face, leaving something smaller and more difficult to hate. I did carry that department while you were gone, he said. Whitmore nearly broke us. North Star wouldn't return calls until I got involved. Then you came back, drew one brilliant map, and everyone acted like the answer had been sitting at your desk the whole time. I never said you did nothing. No, You looked at me like what I did wasn't the hard part. It was a hard part. It wasn't my part. He nodded once. I knew the plan was yours, he said. I also knew they would believe it faster if I said it was mine. That's not an apology. No. He looked down at his hands. It's the ugliest true thing I have. It was not enough to restore us. It was enough to end the argument. North Star approved the expansion 6 weeks later, in phases. Dana required quarterly route control audits and sample dispatch recordings against presentation materials. Paul sent the corrected storm plan to his team with my name under prepared by and Ruth's under dispatch review. Grant became excellent at account management. He also became formal with me. At family dinners, we spoke about road conditions and passed dishes carefully around the space where closeness had been. Natalie remained warm. Lorraine took longer. My mother stopped asking me to make it easier. On my first morning as regional routing manager, Ruth had already placed a fresh laminated storm card on the dispatch rail. Forecast says rain, she said. Forecast always says something. She handed me the blue grease pencil. Its exposed end had worn flat. I drew the first line, felt the pencil catch in the crescent-shaped crack, and wrote my name in the authorization box before clipping the card into place. Ruth opened the radio channel. The drivers' voices settled into silence, waiting for the briefing. I pressed the microphone key. "This is Elena Marquez," I said. "Let's start with the river grade."